The people are important. The people on your team have to believe that what they're doing is important. They have to understand why they're doing it. We look at these athletes who go and set world records or get gold, silver, bronze medals, and we go, oh my gosh, they're just so successful. That must have come overnight, right? And of course, that's not true, but we're just seeing the moment of their success versus the journey of 10,000 steps before that success.
Hello, and welcome, dear listeners, to my podcast, Love People Technology Learning. And I'm your host, Tamara CEO and Lane CI. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be back on the air after the summer break. And today, I'm beyond excited to welcome Allison Sadler to my podcast. Allison is the learning executive for USAA Insurance and Sales divisions. She spent over 20 years at Bank of America, holding several leadership roles in global readiness, associate experience, leadership development, talent analytics, and direct oversight of contact center sites. In addition to her corporate career, Allison has also completed her PhD in the Human Capital Program. This is why I'm so eager and delighted to have this conversation with Allison today. Welcome to my podcast and our show, Allison.
Yes, thanks, Tamara. You're just delightful. Thank you.
Yes, how are you feeling and how is your Monday going? I'd love to hear about it a little.
Yes, no, I'm traveling this week and it's been a great summer, as you mentioned. I think of summers as a time to spend more quality moments with our family and friends and spend time on vacations and just recharge and reconnect. And then come into the fall with really solid intention for how we want to finish the rest of the year.
Yes, absolutely. The same way for me, because I just finished my European trip. Mm-hmm. I traveled a lot this summer, was in Italy, Portugal, Serbia. Yes, a lot of countries which I
amazing.
Yeah. And I also want to say how happy I am to have you on the podcast today, because I had the pleasure of seeing you presentation at the CLW conference in Atlanta back in October 2023. And I was truly inspired by the way you not only discussed L&D, but also shared your personal insights as an individual, a leader, a mom. We have a lot of roles. Yes. And I'm excited to dive into all of that with you today.
Good.
And you're today, it's the first time when you are my guest, but every episode of my podcast begins with the career journey of my unique guests. I'd love for you to share your story with us, how you got started in L&D and how you are grown to become the Chief Learning Officer at USAA. I'm sure everyone listening will be very interested to hear about your experience.
Sure. Well, we all have great journeys, right? And mine is one of shared experiences with people. I started my career at American Express 30 plus years ago.
Wow.
And I started on the phones in college, and my goal was just to help put myself through college and learn a little bit about, corporate America. But truly at the time, I was in college to be a performing artist as a dancer. And so as that journey took a pivot in a good way, I'd had an injury that made me realize that may not be a viable career. I had this great experience and opportunity of working for American Express, and I applied for a leadership role maybe a year or two into working for the company. And as that progressed, there were training opportunities for me there at American Express to train in a classroom, but also lead some curriculum. And then ultimately, I transitioned into some other roles with another company, and then ultimately Bank of America, as you said, for over 20 years. And at the bank, I ran not only operations, but I also had the opportunity to help a team at the time. I think it's interesting how training has grown to full departments. At the time, back in the 90s, we were training professionals, but in our own departments. And so I ran a team, a call center team in mortgage, and I had trainers and designers working for me. So not only did I get the operations experience of what it's like to lead people and a group of people, but also to help them sustain their knowledge and create. This was all before box files and AI and all that great stuff and software that we have now. And we had manuals, we had binders, and it's probably somewhere in a binder graveyard now, but we had binders that we trained people from. So very different era, but really adult learning is adult learning. And so I grew up through that path and ultimately did some work in L&D and did some work in HR, but really loved the training aspect of it. And before I came to USAA, worked at Bank of America in commercial banking, running sales readiness for many commercial bankers who keep our economy going and work with companies all over the country to help them deliver and be at their best from a financial perspective. So wonderful program, and I had a great time there. But I'm also really grateful to be at USAA serving our military population and really living the mission of making sure that our military and veterans, their assets are protected. And we do that through training thousands of our insurance professionals to protect those assets.
Oh my God, it's really amazing. And I love this journey and your experience which you have. And maybe just next question will be about, and what do you really love in your work? Like maybe 3 things which you really love to do, and now you really continue love it. It's why you are in profession.
Yeah, it's interesting as a leader. There's things as you transition to different roles. Doesn't have to necessarily be higher, but different. I think that people have to make a list of what they love to do but can't do anymore to be successful, and where they're really needed. And I will say one of my favorite things to do, but I can't do as much anymore. I love being in the classroom with the learner, and I am known for walking into the classroom and spending time with the learners and talking about how they can be successful and setting good expectations, because my goal would be that they have the best career journey ahead of them, as I did for me 30 years ago. But I can't spend as much time in the classroom as I love, because I'm called to do other things and spend time more on strategy and execution of that strategy. And also making sure our constituents and our leaders are getting what they need out of the programs. But truly, one of the things I love is the learner. So that's one, the learner experience. 2, I would say the technology that we are wonderfully grateful to have in this day and age from a learning perspective. The technology is just incredible that we have access to. But part of the thing that I love to think about is how can we use that technology to make learning more human for other people. And technology doesn't replace humanity, it only supplements humanity. So if we're not thinking about it in those terms, we're really losing a great important aspect of the learning process. And the third is really creating visions that inspire our learning team, but also, again, the learner. So everything starts with, if you're in operations, it starts with your customer. If you're in learning, your customer is the learner. So that's what I really try to stay focused on, is the learning experience. So vision, technology, and learning, the learner experience are really the things that I love most about my job.
Oh my God, thank you for sharing. And it's the same for me. I love classroom the same, because I've started like a trainer, like a facilitator many years ago, and it's the same way.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. And I love technology. I love learning experience, and yes, we are on the same page. I see it. It's why people if you are in learning and development, we're in the same page, like always.
Yes, agreed.
And Allison, you've been in the industry and in the learning and development field for over 25, you told 30 years ago you came to the industry. And naturally, I'm eager to dive into the successful project like you've led. And I'd love for you to share some tips and tricks, what we often call maybe life hacks, but also the stories of both successful and failures, which we have, because it's like we cannot live like just in success life.
Yeah.
We cannot live like just success life. And this way our listeners can feel more confident as they embark on their own L&D project. And now I want to talk about some successful project which you really love, and could you tell us a bit about the project, highlighting the interesting nuances and something which you want to share openly, how it all came together with your team, maybe you're proud about some project, and it will be really useful for our listeners, and we can talk about, because it's really interesting for our listeners.
Sure. So I think that there are a number of different initiatives that I've been involved in. I would say I'm probably the worst project manager. You don't want me project managing anything. And that's just not my sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
So I would say sweet spot is assessing what will work for a particular scenario. And I'll give you two that I think are a bit juxtaposed in terms of the learning execution with which we decided to implement. So the first I'll say is in our global banking readiness at Bank of America. I'll start with that, where you have this disbursement of people in 70 plus markets in our, and I wouldn't say that was global banking, but this would be commercial banking. I was also in global banking, but commercial banking, 70 plus markets. So when you execute something that has that disbursement, right, but that requires a high touch, there are a couple of ways that we executed in sales readiness. So we introduced some sales training, I think late in 2018, 2019, we go back and the years run together, but somewhere around there. And we had, again, with all of that and having such a high touch, because our commercial bankers are responsible for so much, that we want to make sure we're getting all of that nuanced conversation. We typically brought markets together in a regional type of fashion to deliver and execute on the learning portion of it. And then post-training, we would hold sessions by market and by group. And then also layered into that, which I think is one of the most important things we miss in the learning environment, is we give the learner an experience, which we did here in this sales example in banking. But we often forget the role, the most important role that's played by the manager or the executive that's running that group, which is what is their role in the performance coach model, which is they have to reinforce all of it. So once we learn, as we all know as human beings, our brain is a deletion organ. And I tell our new hires that all the time, because they come with this expectation, I'm going to receive this learning and somehow I'm going to retain all of it and be amazing when I first try it, right?
Right.
That's not how it works. So the role of the executive is to help reinforce that learning, and then also coach to say, Tamara, you did great here. You've got the execution down on this portion, but I really need for you to refine and amp up or amp down this particular segment of what you've just been trained on or taught, because this is where you need a little more refinement. And so spending time with the learner at the onset, and even pre-learner, starting to prime the pump with the managers or the executives of that group is really important. Learner experience stage, sustained learner experience, you bring them back in 30, 60, 90, whatever that cadence might be, but then also bring in the executive and with their peers to talk about what their role is and give them really tactical and operational takeaways and activities that will then reinforce and underpin that learning, right? So I would say that would be one area with a sales training that we executed in our banking model. And then fast forward to where we are today and using things like simulations that are underpinned by AI that allow learners to practice what they know and what they have learned conceptually, but now they get reinforcement from an AI bot, or they get feedback from an AI generated bot that then tells them in real time, hey, you did really well here, all clear, but you've got some bumps here. We need you to say this differently or do this differently or click here differently. And then our L&D professionals can then look at that data across a learner, a class, a topic, and then say, what do I need to go in and either reinforce, or did I not teach that well to begin with, or do I have a class that's just not connecting? So I think that's a totally different model that's using technology, where the first model is really about people and about underpinning performance, right? So two totally divergent ways of initiating learning in large populations of people, right? But one's using more the technology base to get to the humanity. The other is more human to human interaction and reinforcing the coaching. Both are totally valid on their face. And that's why I like to use the juxtaposition there.
Absolutely. It's a great example for not for the just project, but initiatives which support and help business to grow. And yes, and what you talked about it several years ago, we did really human things in classroom, and now AI helps us to develop it maybe faster, maybe it's a big helper with AI.
Yes.
And now it's the same. We are thinking in Lane CI the same. Many years ago, we made just virtual trainings or in classroom trainings, and now we develop AI bots, assistants, and big apps which support sales skills, leadership skills, and everything. And it's a great example. And I have next question. You talked about okay, 2 initiatives, but what do you think? What were the key factors that contributed to its success? Because your team, business, maybe you will tell me what were the key factors that contributed to its success? Why you talked about these initiatives? Yeah,
it's a great question, and there are many things that contribute to success. I think that having the vision beforehand of what you want outcomes to be, right? So starting with the end in mind. What outcome am I seeking to have? And what are the behaviors and performance outcomes that we hope to achieve? I.e., what is my hypothesis? Is my hypothesis that people will be better salesmen and women, right? And better bankers as a result of this particular training? Will they achieve more revenue, more capital funding, or liquidity products per client? Is that what we're seeking, or is it longevity in the client relationship? And so I think it's very important before you ever embark on any large initiative, technology or otherwise, to really create, for lack of a better word, because of my academic career, a hypothesis. What do I think will happen as a result of this? And then I back into what are the outcomes associated with what I think will happen with this. So in the case of the simulations, I would hypothesize that learners would be more proficient with more practice, right? We know that as human beings, we can read, we can listen, and we can do, right? Those are all primary ways of learning. We can experience vicariously through others. But when we're using multiple cortices of the brain, we have higher retention. We have higher recall, right? And so with all of those mechanisms, one would think that learners would learn faster, but also retain more, recall more, and have better speed to proficiency or competency. And so if we hypothesize that, we say this is what we want to create, and everything is then aligned to those outcomes. And so when you start building simulations or building activities, if you don't have technology, you then back into how will this help create more practice and better recall and retention for that learner, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And like, how did you measure and evaluate the impact of these like initiatives and these like two different like project lines which you had? Because it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why
Because you told about that. Yes, because you told about that. You need to, like, if you have hypothesis, you need to understand how I will be measured. Like,
that's right.
yes.
That's right. So that's why it's important, like before you ever start with any of these things, it is important to say, what do I expect the outcome to be? What am I driving to? And so when I look at that, then I know what I'm measuring before I even start, which is, did that banker have more client retention, less attrition? Did that banker have higher revenue, right? Or more new clients? So you can peg anything that the operations, right? If you're delivering training to operations or a population of people, what are their business results? And then do I expect those business results to be better? Do I expect them to be happening faster with a greater degree? So those are the things that very quickly I just say, what's important to the business? Then that becomes important to me. And I either measure that in faster clicks, or I measure that in more revenue, more calls. You know, you can put whatever business metric you want around that, right?
Yes, it's great answer, because for me, like if you want to measure like learning and development project or initiatives, you need to know not just like, you know, the feedback forms, the answer for the feedback forms or something which we have like just in trainings. You need to measure some business results or clients results or something. Like it's a big challenge. Yes. Honestly, it's a big challenge. And I don't know how did you do that, because it's a big question for the industry, like every day, like the same question, how to measure learning and development initiatives. And if you can show the result, like in a client's results or business results or like product results or something, like it's a great result for the learning and development departments, like for the learning and development function. Yeah.
Well, and they need to be closely tied, if not inextricably intertwined with your business, because otherwise, why are you spending time and energy implementing something that's not going to move business results, right? Or improve the experience from both the learner and then ultimately whoever your client, customer, member is. So those are the things you just ground yourself in very early. But I would also say throughout the implementation of any initiative, the people are important. The people on your team have to believe that what they're doing is important. They have to understand why they're doing it. But then on the other side of that, we talked about the executives play a role in socializing the importance, and the people who are responsible for implementing the particular initiative, the trainer, the instructional designers, they all play a part in making that successful and giving feedback as you start to flight important parts of your milestones, so that you get feedback along the way to tell you, I need to tweak here, I need to tweak there, or the people and the technology that we've purchased, you know, we need a different trainer on with this group of people than that group of people. And so those are all the things that I think make projects successful or initiatives successful, along with just the support of your leaders, and so that they can then continue to message that along the way.
Yeah, yes, it's true. And like now you talked about the team and like which support some initiatives in, like always you are like executive leader, you have like the great team. I know that. Because
Yeah.
if you're a great leader, you have great team.
Great team.
And
Yes.
maybe you will share some values which you share with your team about like team and about the team. It's not a family, but it looks like a family, and maybe some values which you share with your team and which you support with the team, like maybe 3 things which really is important for you, like a leader.
Yeah, so I think that depending on the type of group that you're in, these could be a little bit different, but I will say they're the very 3 things that I would say I love to do that we should share a passion for if you're in learning at all. And the first is the learner, right? So even if I am an instructional designer, and I've had teams of instructional designers for the past 20 years, I encourage people to get in the classroom. Look at the learner, observe the learner, experience things from that lens and that seat, because you're not just putting together curriculum and documents that look good, are accurate, right, and technical. No, I want you to really say, if I were the learner in this seat, taking this content, what is my experience? And is it optimal for whatever technology and tools you have? So we should all be passionate about the learner, and that is a value we should all share as a training team. And then I would also say we should all be focused on how can technology help aid in that learning experience. So very much some of the top 3 that I talked about is just the focus on the learner experience, the technology that is coming to us, and how can we embrace that in a positive way and also manage the risk of it, but embrace that in a positive way to elevate and modernize the learning experience. And I think we all share a passion for making sure we have the optimal technology and the right practice so that learner gets right where we need to be. And then the third, I will say, that I didn't include in the first 2, but really having a passion and constituent for our teammates, and extending that out to having a passion for our mission, particularly at our company, which is really serving our military population and veterans and their families. Because if we don't get this right, if we don't get it right for the learner doesn't get it right for our members. And so I think that is the most important thing that is really pervasive among all of us, is making sure that we do a good job on this behind the scenes so that we set our teams up for success to support the member and their experience.
Yes, it's great. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Me
And
too.
I'm waiting for the time when I will see you in real life, not just like in virtual, because it's a great values, and I think like we need to share it like with the people who are around us, and yes, it's great. And Allison, you talked about your initiatives with your team, and I know that it's not just like one day to do, it's like long time. And what were the biggest challenges you faced in these initiatives and in this project, and how did you overcome them? Because it's like sometimes it's not so simple, not like so simple to do.
No, and I think it's probably how we all romanticize anyone's success, right? So you look at
Absolutely.
we're in the time of Olympics, right? And so we look at these athletes who go and set world records or get gold, silver, bronze medals, and we go, oh my gosh, they're just so successful. That must have come overnight, right? And of course, that's not true, but we're just seeing the moment of their success versus the journey of 10,000 steps before that success, which of course requires so much discipline. And in a lot of cases, I see there's no motivation. People say, what motivates you? Nothing motivates me, right? I don't get out of the morning, get up in the morning and go, it's a glorious day. I have the discipline every day of saying, I get to do this job, and it's my duty to do it well. And I love what I do, but I'm tired, right? So that's where it's like, oh,
Absolutely.
I don't have the motivation. Like you say, you and I were talking, I'm like, you've got kids, you've got responsibilities. I have, academic articles and books I'm publishing. And so when I get up in the morning, I'm tired. I don't step out of the bed and just go, I've got it going on. And like these athletes, they don't get up either. Their body's hurt and they're tired. So it's the discipline that carries us, right? And the discipline of saying, I believe in what I'm doing enough to say, this is important every day, regardless of how I feel. And I know I need to do XYZ every day in order to carry forward a specific initiative. So when I think about technology initiatives, which the rapidity of change in our culture and environment has really just it's just prolific and it turns over so quickly. So none of us will be immune to, okay, we're going to use this technology and in 2 years it's going to advance and now it's going to do this and we need to repeat this whole process. And I say that all to tie all of these things together to say when you flight new technology, which we will all be doing over the next 10 years, there are things that you need to keep doing, right? You need to keep pulsing your learners. You need to test out the technology to make sure it's still fit for purpose and really serving the hypothesis we talked about, right? And the outcomes. You need to be connecting and engaging with your constituents. And I think the most difficult part that we as learning professionals, which is unique to us, and where probably many of us fail, is we don't provide the data that says, if I'm going to invest, I'll just be arbitrary and say $1 million in this initiative, this training, this technology, whatever that may be. Here is how you, the company, or you, the executive, or you, the C-suite, are going to get paid back that $1 million. Is it in additional revenue? Is it in reduced talk time? Is it in speed to competency? Is it in reduced errors, right? How is it that I am going to self-fund as a learning executive this initiative? And the discipline of that, which is where I'm tying this together, is that we are constantly looking at the numbers, the data, being thoughtful about what's important to the company or the business at that time, to put forth an educated business case, a compelling case of why we want to do this initiative, this technology, this training. And that's a hard thing, as you and I just both talked about, where it's harder in training, but it's not impossible. And everything should be linked to business results, quite frankly. And so I think that's oftentimes where we don't see success. We don't see the front runners at the Olympics because a project or technology never gets approved because we didn't do the diligence and didn't have the discipline, right, to put forth the case. And that's where I say, I don't have motivation. That's not in my wheelhouse, but I do have discipline. I'll come back and find new data sets. I'll come back and find new ways of measuring that help me really provide the right business case to put forth something that I really believe in will improve both the business results and the learner experience. And that's where discipline and success comes in. And if I fail, it's because I failed to do those things, right?
Yes. Yeah, right. And you told about like, if I failed, like, yes, we have failures, like every day something happens with us. And like, yes, you talked about athletes and like, yes, without failures, we don't have success. It's true.
That's right.
And like, of course, I know you had some failures, but like, can you share maybe you can explain what helped you recover yourself from the failure, maybe some resources which you have inside or outside which support you in your failures, and maybe it's X like YZ which you do to recover after that.
Yeah, so I think part of it's mindset. So I look at failures as ways to get information that enable my future success. So the most common one that that people, if someone says, I need some mentoring or I didn't get this job, can you give me some feedback so I'm more successful in the next job? And the line typically is your last setback is your next setup, if you so choose. So what did you learn from not getting that job that will then help give you more information about how you can get the next job? Is it that you weren't confident in your interview skills? Is it that you weren't able to draw good stories and experiences? Is it that you didn't build the relationships in that team before you applied? So what did you learn from that? And how can that help you in the next arena? So in many of these cases in the projects that I talked about, the first two, I will go present, and those two would be good examples of saying, I'd like to go do this. And usually the first or second times I'm not successful at pitching the idea. And so that gives me information and I don't look at that as a failure. I don't say, oh, I failed. I looked at it as, okay, what did I not do to be compelling, to create a vision, to create energy and excitement around why this is an important investment of time, energy, and money. And so what can I learn about how I need to better create that narrative to get the investment I need that I feel is so important for our company, whatever that company may be. And so it gives me learning points about myself. But also if you view like, okay, I'm going to go tell Tamara I need to buy this new technology. There's a lot of AI technology that's AI generated content, right? And it's fascinating to me what the possibilities of that are now, but also 5 years from now, how like elegant that's going to be and amazing. So I think about that and I say, what is the story around that? What is the narrative? And if I can't articulate that well, what is it that I learn about myself? But that it's not a failure. It's just, I haven't put together all the pieces for people in a way that resonates with them. So I need to do some work in that process. And I need to create a better business case, go get more data, go get more metrics. And so in all of the scenarios I've shared with you, I wasn't successful the first time, or people said, okay, yes, we like that, but we need to go about it this way. And it's going to take this amount of time. And you have to involve more people and more approvals. I could quit at that moment and say, that's too much effort, right? And end it there. That's the end of the story. But I choose to say, what did I learn from this? And how do I keep going with the discipline I have to keep the story going to the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter? It is only at the point that I'm going to quit that I have saturated everything that I know to be successful and compelling cases, or that I feel like I now have so much information that it's telling me that it's not going to improve the learner experience. It's not going to improve the operational business plan or business results, and that it's not the right solution. And so rather than think of failure as an ending, I see it as the next beginning of where I start to be more successful. And so as you talked about things inside, to me, it is all inside of saying, gosh, I have been rejected for more jobs and more projects and more pitches than I've ever been successful. But all of those little rejections and no's and not nows were setting me up to be more successful for something bigger in my journey, or to help me learn how to be more successful so that I don't get that not now or no the next time in my projects or in my pitches. And so I think with that mindset, it's not so epically emotional, because I think the other place that people tend to over-index is that failure is something that is personal, and it's not. And if you can remove the I didn't get the job to I was one of many successful candidates, or they rejected my business case to implement this initiative, to I can be successful if I make a few pivots and come back around, then you're much more likely to keep going to the next chapter rather than end your story there. But the emotional aspect of it, and that it's all about us, when it's not about us, it's about the learner, it's about the business results, it's about the mission. And if you are aligned to those things, then you just keep going and align yourself more and more and more to those things, right?
Yes.
And that is the way I think that we sometimes get derailed to a point that we spiral away from what our original values system and alignments are. And it shouldn't be emotional. So when you talk about recovery, resilience, it's all about putting things into perspective, that it's not about me, it has nothing to do with me. Do I want things to be successful? Yes, but I want them to be successful because I really believe that they are going to change the game for a learner, for a customer, and for our team, not because it's about, am I successful or did I fail? It's really about putting it out there rather than in here, right?
Right. Yes. Thank you for sharing about like this point, and I love your answer. And like I share the same things. Like yes, because it's a mindset, and
Yes.
it's like just steps. It's not something which we like. Always, I talked to my team and people around me about entrepreneurship, because if you're an entrepreneur, it means you have a lot of steps, and like I think like 10 steps, it's like failures.
Yes.
And just one step will help you to jump like for 100 steps.
That's
Like,
right.
yes.
Right.
And if you are thinking just like, oh no, it's so bad, it's so bad, no. Like you need to think like it's just like small piece to the
Yes.
one step, like just the biggest one. And it's
Absolutely.
why we are doing a lot, like yes, and it's the same way. And like maybe, Allison, my last professional question will be about technology, because you talked about that and you love AI, you love
I do.
technology, you love connect people and technology. It's my mission to connect people and technology. And I have like my last question about like, what do you think, like, what do you plan to change to stay on trend, like, with ChatGPT, like about AI, and ensure like your projects or your initiatives remains valuable for people, like from the company, like, yes, maybe
Yeah.
did you think about that? Or maybe you do something special for that?
So staying on trend, one of the ways I do that is, is I go to conferences. I want I want to see what other people are using, thinking about challenges, because as you know, as an entrepreneur, you always start with what is an untapped need? What do people need that they don't have? What are the problems that people are trying to solve for? And if you can solve that problem, figure out that untapped need, right? Then, the sky's the limit for what you can possibly do as long as you execute well, right? We talked about that earlier in the podcast. And so I think that as you talk to more people, you come to a saturation point of saying, we're all after solving this. We're all after getting better results with this. Or we all don't have this and we all need it, right? And so I go back to when I first started with Bank of America, I had a pager.
Oh, me too,
I had a pager. I don't know if that is a badge of honor or a complete humiliation of where I am in my career, but I'll take it as the badge of honor that it is. And I ran a call center for military personnel, and we worked right across the base. But, we had things like outages or issues, in banking, as you always do. And so I had a pager. Fast forward, I had a BlackBerry, right? Everybody remembers BlackBerries. Then it was an iPhone, right? So over the last, 20 years, we've gone from solving needs of, I need to get a hold of someone for an emergency, to being able to text, replace my Slack, my Outlook, everything is on my phone. on my device, and all of those things can go with me wherever I am going, rather than me have to be somewhere and stop and go to a place where that exists. And so if I think about solving that type of need, right, that's the evolution from pager to BlackBerry to iPhone, right, to whatever is next, smartphone, right? So I think staying ahead of technology is simply thinking about what do people need and what is the gap today for how we help solve that. And from a learning perspective, we're all interested in how do we learn faster? How do we retain more? As I said, the brain is a deletion organ. It's designed to keep things out of our brain that we don't need so that we can be focused for the next thing that we need. And so there's a lot of interesting things going on in the market. I know we only have a few minutes, but one of the things I am truly fascinated by, but also terrified in the same vein, is for learning itself proper, not necessarily AI, but thinking about Neuralink, which is a company, and chips that go in your brain, and how that can help learning, truly, like medically, how that could help someone who has seizures potentially change the composition of their brain so that they don't have to experience that. People who have ability or challenges focusing, how we might change the electrical composition to help them focus more. So I think all of that's fascinating and scary at the same time, but I think that's on the horizon from a learning perspective. Certainly AI in a number of fields to create better learning experiences, practices, bots, all of those things can help us absorb less information. And I know that's counterintuitive to what everybody else say. I don't want to absorb more information. I want to absorb less. And I want things in front of me. Again, if my brain is a deletion organ, I don't want to have to remember all of it. I want it to be summarized and presented in front of me for the problem I'm trying to solve today. And that way my whiteboard in my brain stays free, right? So those are the things that for learners, for me, for you, those are all the things that I think are exciting about what's on the horizon. But I would say go to where those things are and where people are talking about them to stay current.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Allison, for your professional answers. And
Sure.
in the end of my podcast, I have some questions outside of your professional life, because my podcast, it's about unique people, and I want to share something unique from you, not just about business or something.
Yeah.
And my question will be what is your vision of the maybe about your life, of the ideal balance between personal life and career, and how do you strive to achieve it in your experience?
Sure, it is never a perfect balance, and I think it's more of an integration of what is important at that particular moment. There are times, as a working mother, where you need to tend to your children. There are times when your job needs you more than your children, right? So it's assessing that landscape on a really consistent basis. But I think the most poignant thing I can impart is that most of the time we're looking at that. What does my family, friends, etc. need? What does my job need? And oftentimes we forget about what do we need ourselves. So I want to make sure that I am the best version of myself. Do I get to that every day? Absolutely not. But my goal would be every day to bring the 100% that I've got that day to bear for myself, but for others. And if I'm not taking care of myself, certainly the rest of the parties involved are not going to get the best of me. And so it's more about integration. And there are times when health takes more of a front seat billing, and should, by the way. In fact, I was having this conversation with a friend who said, if I was still in that job that I was in, I wouldn't have gone to get my liver tested and learned that I had this fatty liver disease.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you are putting your health on the back burner, right, things compound. And it should be a wake-up call that your health is the most important thing, focusing on the things you need, sleep, food, nutrition, movement, all of those things. And then you can really be in a good position to say, my kids, my partner, spouse needs me, my work needs me. And some days your work needs you 10 hours, and some days your kids need you those 10 hours. So you have to figure out what that looks like for you, but that's certainly a balance we all play.
Yes. And what are your like sources of inspiration? Like maybe some books, maybe some films or public figures, or I don't know, maybe YouTube channels, or maybe ChatGPT conversation every day. Like, I don't know.
Yes, no, ChatGPT and I don't talk that often. We do talk, don't get me wrong. I do ask ChatGPT things just for speed, right? But I really do believe that getting out and being outside and having a balance between being in a work environment and an outside environment is healthy. And that inspiration really is thinking about, as you talked about, what is it that's important? What do I want to work on professionally? What's important to me personally? I'm a voracious reader. I love podcasts. So I'm a big fan of Huberman. A lot of his has to do with neuroscience and how the
Yeah,
brain.
absolutely.
Yeah, and there's some great MIT audit courses on brain, how the brain learns and retains. Big fan of that. But truly, I like to read. I like to write. I like to be outside hiking, and those are the things that give me time to think and be thoughtful about what's next, whether that's in the office or out of the office, and give me good balance, right, to just be and think about how I'm going to execute next. So certainly a balance of all of that is important.
Great, great. I love it. And my three last questions, it will be quick, but in the end of my podcast, all my guests answer for these three questions. First of this question, what was the last thing you asked ChatGPT or like, I don't know, Claude, or I don't know, maybe
Gemini or Bard.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I asked ChatGPT, ironically, again, intersection of person and technology. I'm finishing up a book on leadership, and I asked ChatGPT how to self-publish a book on Amazon. And so it gave me 7 simple steps to self-publish on Amazon.
Yes. And is it your book?
Yes.
Like new book? Oh, you can tell us.
Yes.
Tell please, Allison, what's your book and when it will come? Like, yes, we will be waiting for it.
Yes. So it is called Ripples of Leadership. And it is just about how to ground yourself as a leader so that you leave a legacy that is grounded in purpose, but also sets up the next generation behind you to lead in the way that's important to be led, right?
Wow, yes. And I will be one of your first person buyer who will order in Amazon. Please send the link, and I will share with like my audience, because it's really great. I think it's really great. Like maybe okay, you can tell me like one thing which you really love in your book, maybe one thing why you love your book.
The whole goal of the book would be to make things easier for the next generation of leaders so that they don't have to figure it out by themselves. They don't have to suffer. They don't have to have as many bruises, or maybe they have different bruises, right? More elevated bruises, but that it's easier for them to lead in the next generation because they have more knowledge and information than I had 30 years ago, just learning by watching or experiencing vicariously through what I saw leaders doing well, or where I saw leaders falling short of really gifting their experience to other people.
Yes. Oh my God. So it's an amazing, and I think I will ask you one day more to talk to me about your book and about new leaders generation. Yes, it will be great. And Thank you. And next question, tell your favorite quatrain or lyrics and explain why exactly you choose it and you love it. It's it's my favorite question.
Well, in this space, I will not be as academic.
Yes, it's good. It's
Yeah, I'm
good.
academic all the time, but and you might have been when Johan Laville and I were talking at Corporate Learning Network, and he was like, "I'm the fun one, Allison's the serious one."
Yeah.
I do have a fun side of me, but I love music. As I said, I was trained to be a performing artist, but I love Dua Lipa,
Yeah.
and every time her song Training Season comes on, it makes me giggle. Of course, it's not about training, but
Yes, it's good. It's
right.
good.
But Training Season is over is essentially one of my favorite lyrics right now. And then the other lyric would be, again, from music is one is the loneliest number. And I think one is the loneliest number from a leadership perspective, because as leaders, as we've talked about through this whole podcast, you are going to meet failure after failure after failure, or as I like to see them, hurdle after hurdle after hurdle.
Yeah.
And you may trip over a hurdle, but it's whether or not you get back up and you learn from that you can jump over the next. And so that can be a very lonely endeavor of saying, why was I not successful on that hurdle? And how can I be successful at the next one? And doing that is very introspective. You have to be very honest with yourself, very humble, and it's a great experience. But unless you're ready for that, it's a very lonely place to be, but also very exciting because you grow from those experiences and you get better.
Yes, great. And my last question, it's like ask the next guest. On my podcast, here's how it goes. Every guest gets to throw a question at the next guest. And I believe it adds a unique touch, allowing the previous guest to pose a question to the next one. And Rick Lozana was my wonderful last guest, and he passed on his question to you. Are you ready to answer?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a two-part question. What have you added to your life that has added value? What have you deleted from your life that has added value?
Okay, so what have I added to my life that's added value?
Yeah.
I would say that I have added 5:30 a.m. workouts. Don't love it, but it adds value.
Yes.
And for those of you that are struggling with that, Wendy Suzuki has a great TED Talk on the value of morning workouts and the positive correlation of exercise on brain cognition and focus. So I have done that for a long time, but I used to also work out at night, sometimes in the afternoon. But what I've added is it always has to happen in the morning, unless I'm traveling some weird hours. That has to happen. And it makes me much more productive throughout the day.
Yes.
I've also added yoga as a way to really be deliberate about what's happening mentally and connecting myself to just being in the present moment. So those two things, I know is only needed one, but those two. And then what have I deleted from my life? I don't do as much social media. So someone's like, are you on Instagram? I'm like, I am, but like, you won't see me doing a lot of stuff there. No TikTok. I will connect with people and through a few social media platforms, but it's not making me smarter. And I want to wake up smarter. So I don't delete that from my life, but I certainly minimize that in my life because it's not adding a lot of value. The more platforms that come out, the less I'm engaged in more. And then also I'm okay with my house not being totally clean all the time. I've had to let go of that. I also wanted to, make sure everything's tidy, and I do put things in their spot, but I've let go of trying to make it just an incredible, always clean, always looking presentable. It doesn't matter. No one's going to remember about that for me in 20 years.
And I used to do my workout at 5:30.
Yeah.
Like 3 months, I tried to do that. Like,
Yes.
yes, but like, at 8:30 p.m., I was like,
You're out like a light.
I have, yes,
For
it's
sure.
unbelievable. But like, I have 3 sons, 3 kids. I need to be so active in the evening and sometimes at night. And oh my God, no, 5:30. It's not my, like,
Nope.
I loved it. I loved it. But like when you have like small kids and like you need to spend
I
time
get
in
it.
the evening with them, yes.
Yes.
But I loved it. It's really the same way. It's like a lot of energy from the start of the day, and it's really great, good for your brain and like
Yes.
everything. But it's
Yes.
unbelievable. And it's your time, Allison. Can
Yes.
you like ask the question like my next guest, and I will ask my next guest.
Oh, this will be fun. So we'll go back to something I mentioned earlier. Would you put a Neuralink chip in your brain?
Oh my God.
That'll
Yes.
be a good
And
question.
why? And why?
And why? Yes. And why would you
Yes.
want to do it or not do it, right?
Yes,
So I think that'll
absolutely.
be fun for your next guest.
Yes, I met one executive leader in the world, and he has a chip, like he has a chip on his arm,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's chip like special for
I think
like
I know who it
card,
is.
like
Yes.
everything, and like yes, and I met him in person, and we talked, and he like yes, it was like unbelievable story, because it was like I think 7 years ago, 7 or 8, like yes, 7 or 6 years ago. Yes, it was like first chips around the world, and he implemented.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's probably more of the biological tracking than it is
Yeah.
the
Yes.
neural chip, but the neural chip has promise for many things, right?
Absolutely
So
right.
yeah, so ask your next guest. I'll be
I'm
watching.
little afraid
Yeah.
about me, honestly. I'm afraid. I love technology, but not now.
Yeah, no, it could be in the
Yes,
future, in the future.
yes. Allison, and we've done. And
Yeah.
I'm really like, it was really so great conversation, and it's been a joy to like initiate this meaningful
Yeah.
conversation. And thank you for coming to my podcast. And
Of course.
yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You got it. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. And once again, thank you for being an integral part of our podcast family. Stay tuned to more captivating episodes filled with engaging conversations and narratives that inspired. Until we meet again, take care, stay curious, and continue shining brightly. Bye, Allison, and have an amazing day. Yes.
Thank you, you too.